Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining today's IC Realtime webinar. In today's webinar, we will be discussing IC Realtime's suite of new technology. This is going to be a discussion about a lot of the technology offerings that you can expect from IC Realtime as well as their hardware. I have muted everyone's microphone at the moment, but I will unmute everyone's microphone at the end of the webinar to field any questions anyone might have. My name is Michael Caballero. I'm one of the national sales executives here at IC Realtime, and let's get started. So like I mentioned, we're going to be talking a bit about IC Realtime's new technology and some of our offerings. With some of these technologies, it's going to bring better assets to a lot of your cameras and recorders, as well as some software feature sets and a couple of just information that you can utilize from IC Realtime to utilize a better security system, build a better security system, and have all of the knowledge available to you. We're going to be talking about intelligent motion detection. We're also going to be talking about AI-enhanced PTZ auto tracking, perimeter protection, along with facial recognition, extended PoE, as well as iSniper night color technology. So first, let's talk about intelligent motion detection. So intelligent motion detection is a very much enhanced version of your traditional motion detection. Now, your traditional motion detection is pixel-based motion detection. So if you don't mask out a lot of the moving objects that may create false positives, you're going to get notifications for basically anything that changes the pixels on screen. So now many of you as dealers and installers know what ends up happening with that is your end user gets notifications for tons of false positives and no longer wants to utilize that motion detection. Now, with intelligent motion detection, this gives you the ability to have that motion detection, but use a AI algorithm that is only looking for people and vehicles and ignores all of the background noise that you would come to expect. So trees moving, grass, light changes, things like that, rain, bugs, those are all going to be ruled out as false positives. And you're only going to be notified or be able to play back instances of people and vehicles on your cameras. So intelligent motion detection is going to recognize people and vehicles, but it's going to also understand the passing clouds, moving tree branches, and again, it's going to note those as false positives and ignore those and just send you those instances of people and vehicles. Now, you can receive all of your notifications in the ICRSS Pro mobile application as well as Smart ICRSS, and then from the recorder, you can play back and search specifically for people and vehicles and then get your video clips for those instances, very much like an Ella style. The difference here being there's no monthly fee for this. It's baked into the cameras and the recorders. So it's all turnkey when you have any of our IPMX, FX, MX recorders, as well any of our IPMX or FX cameras, as well as our IPEL line of cameras. Here is a brief video showing the efficacy of this here. So as you can see, you go to set your time and date settings and your channel, specify what you want to search for, including people and vehicles. Here we're just searching for people as it's on a test bench. So what you're going to see is you're going to get back all the clips of people and vehicles on your camera and be able to play back that video as well as export that video. Apologies there. So this is a huge advantage here. Now we're going to take a look at perimeter protection in a second. And just a word of advice here when it comes to IMD is that this encompasses the entire scene. So in doing so, if you have a coverage area that is looking at things like a sidewalk away from your residence or your commercial install or a street, you're going to want to make sure that you use perimeter protection that we'll talk about in a second, because this will capture people and vehicles that are just walking on the sidewalk adjacent to your commercial or residential install, as well as vehicles passing on the street. And in doing so, that may give you false positives of people and vehicles you don't want to capture. So we're going to talk about why that matters when we get to the perimeter protection. Next, we're going to talk about AI-enhanced PTZ auto tracking. So we use our AI technology here, not just to remove false positives for people and vehicles on our IMD. We also utilize this for our auto tracking on our PTZs. With this AI enhanced auto tracking, it's going to give you the ability to monitor people and vehicles and track them with much more efficiency. Not only that, on our AI enhanced PTZs like our 8040X that you see here, it's going to give you the ability to have that auto tracking work efficiently at much lower mounting heights, your 10, 15 feet, which can be used for residential installs. Here we'll take a brief look at our PTZ tracking. As you can see, it has other vehicles in the scene that are moving as well. Doesn't get lost on any of our trees that are blowing in the background. Just maintains that coverage of that vehicle and then returns back to its position. So much better PTZ tracking if you're using that IPEL P8040X with that AI technology. So next is perimeter protection, and perimeter protection is very similar to your IMD. It's looking for motion and it's ruling out false positives just like IMD does. The difference with perimeter protection here is that this is going to allow you to draw an area of interest. So I'm going to come back here to this video and I'm going to pause it briefly. Now with this video here, what you can see is we have our sidewalk, which is adjacent to our building here in South Florida. And we also have a very busy street here. Now, if we were just using IMD in this scene, we're going to get all of our notifications for all these vehicles that are in our parking lot, which we do want. However, what we're also going to get notifications for are these vehicles that are passing on the street here, as well as any foot traffic that occurs on this sidewalk here. What perimeter protection is going to do is allow you to draw an area of interest, very likely in this parking lot. And then any vehicles that enter, exit, or occupy that area of interest in this parking lot, we're going to receive notifications for, we're going to be able to play back on. The only difference is, since we have only drawn that area of interest in our parking lot, everything in the background is going to be ignored. So these vehicles are not going to be captured. Anybody walking down the sidewalk is not going to be captured. And anybody who enters this parking lot, exits this parking lot, or occupies the intrusion zones that we have drawn here, which I'll show you what those intrusion zones look like next, then we're going to receive our notifications. So that's the difference between perimeter protection and your IMD. IMD encompasses the entire scene. Perimeter protection allows you to specify a specific area of interest and ignore any motion around that. So again, you're going to have the ability to search only for people and vehicles and be notified only for people and vehicles. False alarm filter is still functioning on perimeter protection and is going to identify lights, leaves, insects, rain, animals, and rule those out as false positives. So as you can see here in the scene, we have many different perimeters. So this is an area of interest. We would call this an intrusion zone. And same here. And any object, whether it's a person or a vehicle that enters, exits, or occupies this area, it's going to get lit up. You'll receive notifications and you'll get playback from that. So as you can see here, you have trees swaying in the wind that are not in that intrusion zones. You have vehicles entering, exiting, occupying those areas. However, as you can see, the vehicles that are moving in the parking lot here are not getting notified because they are not in that area of interest. So again, that's what your perimeter protection and IDS is for. It's to make sure that you're monitoring only the areas that you want specified and ignoring everything else in the background. So here's some examples here: perimeter protection, intelligent alarms that remove 90% of those false positives. They combine with our IVS rules. They allow you to create object-oriented triggers and alerts. They supercharge your playback time. As you guys saw, when I did that playback, it's just a matter of specifying your channel, specifying your time and date, and then specifying whether you want to search for people, vehicles, or both, and getting those clips that you saw. With our competitors, it's standard alarm triggers only, standard motion detection, your basic line crossing and intrusion. Your playback is still relegated to your just your specific timeline, not a clip-based playback, and then lackluster zone and configuration settings. So next, we're going to talk about facial recognition. So as many of you have seen, we have introduced many of our cameras and recorders that support facial recognition, not facial detection, where it's just detecting faces. This is actually recognizing faces that have been uploaded to a database, right? So there's two methods of which in this works. We have facial recognition cameras that can store a database in them. We also have facial recognition recorders that can use any camera and create a database in that recorder. Now, something you want to keep in mind here when it comes to facial recognition is that these are commercial and residential facial recognition solutions. This is not something that's going to tap into some federal or municipal database or a DMV and pull all of citizen information from there and allow you to identify anybody who is seen on the cameras and the recorders. This is a system where you have to create this database. So an example of that would be for a commercial install, maybe something like an office complex. Where you want to utilize facial recognition with your employee base. What you can do is take snapshots into JPEGs of all of your employees, upload those into the database, create the metadata for those employees, so that way they can be recognized when they're on cameras throughout a facility or an office. Right, so keep in mind, you have to create this database. Anybody who is not in this database is going to appear on the cameras as a stranger. So with that, that's something you want to be aware of when you're selling facial recognition to any commercial or residential install, is that this is a database that has to be built. It's not going to tap into anything like a government or municipal database or even something like a DMV. Do keep that in mind. So on these facial recognition recorders, you can store up to 10,000 faces in 10 built facial recognition databases. So each database will support up to 10,000 faces. Now you can do this a couple of different ways. You can upload JPEGs, like I mentioned, or if you capture a stranger or someone on the cameras, it'll utilize the facial detection to notify you of a stranger. You can then take that image and upload the metadata into that. What I mean by metadata is going to be information about that person. So their name, their gender, their birthday, address, maybe the employee number or certificates, so that they're identified in that database. Same thing is if you capture somebody on screen, you can upload that image, create that metadata, so now they're a recognized face as opposed to just a stranger. Now, when you do get those stranger alerts, it's going to give you some information. It's going to give you information about the gender of the person that's captured, rough age of the person, their demeanor, as well as where if they would have a beard or glasses. So that's some information you will at least have for any strangers that are captured. Now, something to keep in mind here, a useful asset with these recorders is going to be the ability for access control. You can utilize the facial recognition built into these recorders with alarm output relays for access control to maybe unlock a door, open up a gate, things like that. You do have that capability here on those recorders with facial recognition. Now, this is not as much as a software or a technology, as much as it is an asset that we've developed and utilized on our cameras. So this is Dory. Of course, as you can see on screen, it's an acronym that stands for Detect, Observe, Recognize, and Identify. Now, what Dory does for you is it indicates the distances at which you're going to be able to do any of these four things. So when you look at an IC real-time spec sheet, you're going to have those Dory distances. An example of that is going to be first, what kind of camera that you're using in terms of resolution, varifocal, fixed lens, how high is your mounting height, whether it's a rooftop, a second floor, first floor mount, or interior, how far away and where the camera is mounted. Do you want to observe or identify something? Now, once you have all those taken into effect, what you're going to see on the spec sheets is the distance at which you can detect somebody, observe somebody, recognize somebody, and identify somebody. So for a 4 or 5 megapixel fixed lens camera, Your detection distance may be 200 feet, and that's where you can see movement. Your observational distance may be about 150 feet. That's when you're able to observe whether it is a person or an animal, and then recognize. You'll probably get back to, and I'm doing about 50-foot increments. So at about 100 feet, you'll be able to, or less than that, you'll be able to recognize whether it's a male or a female, if it is a truck or a car or things like that. And then your identifiable distances, which may be anywhere between 30 feet, maybe 45 feet. You'll be able to identify somebody, so what they're wearing, facial features, and especially the higher resolution of the camera. The higher the resolution of the camera, the better. And you'll be able to identify whether the vehicle pulling up is a Chevy or a Ford or a Dodge Ram or a BMW or a Mercedes. So those are the distances. And what this is going to do for you is it's going to really help you to explain to your end user what they can expect from their IC real-time cameras in terms of what they're going to be able to see and what distance they're going to be able to see those. Now, next we have EPOE, or Extended Power over Ethernet. So Extended Power over Ethernet is a measure in which we can give you the ability to have longer cable runs. So when it comes to things like standard PoE cameras, you have a distance of about 320 feet, 328 to be exact. With EPOE, using a specific set of switches and a specific set of cameras, you do have the ability to take those distances to up to 2,600 feet. Now, something you want to keep in mind when it comes to EPOE is that you'll need a specific switch. You'll need specific cameras that support EPOE. But once you have those, you'll have the ability to go these further distances. Now, something to keep in mind here is your bandwidth and your throughput. So at about 960 feet, you go from 100 megabits of throughput on that EPOE run to about, beyond that, to about 10 megabits of throughput. So I generally like to keep things in the about 1,000-foot range, which is quite a distance for most installs. But you do have the ability to go further than that. But do keep in mind your wattage as well as your data is going to greatly diminish as you go further out up to that 2,600 feet. Next, we have extended power over coax as well. We have a few different solutions for this, but what this does is this allows you to use your already existing coax cable runs for retrofits that many of you are aware of, where you would use an HDVR and an HD AVS camera and recorder to swap out the old analog cameras and analog recorder, and you would have a high definition over coax environment. There's some limitations there, like when you're using any of our hybrid HD AVR recorders, once you start adding IP cameras, you lose that analytic technology that comes from the recorder. What this is going to do for you, using a couple of balunds, is going to allow you to use an NVR and a switch along with an IP camera with those balunds at both ends, and actually have that ability to have not only data over coax, but have power over coax as well. So it's a new way to retrofit where you can still leave that already existing coax cable there, but upgrade them to an NVR and IP camera system using those already existing coax cables. So next and lastly is going to be our iSniper night color technology. So what iSniper night color technology is, it's a series of cameras that, instead of using IRs for nighttime, uses a couple of soft white light LEDs in the somewhat 3,000 Kelvin range. So it's going to give you warm white light, but it's going to illuminate that scene very much like a spotlight. I wouldn't say like a floodlight, but like a spotlight to keep the image in color at nighttime. It's a great technology, allows you to have that color in nighttime to identify somebody even at night if they do appear in the cameras. One of the limitations here is going to be, and it's not really a limitation of the technology, but you may have some HOA, homeowners associations, and they may have limitations on spotlights coming off a home. So that's something you're going to want to pay attention to. You definitely don't want to use this indoors. This is really for your external residential and commercial cameras, and it's going to allow you to, again, illuminate that scene with white light technology, white LEDs like a spotlight. It will not use any IRs and allow you to illuminate and have that color image quality. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take any questions anyone might have, and let me give you an example here of that soft white light. So as you can see here, we have our daytime with our IP camera. I have some time lapse here. It's going to take you into the evening hours. And as you can see, that scene is illuminated not by an ambient light coming off the house, but by the camera's soft white lights themselves. So you have that scene illuminated overnight, and it's still going to give you color at nighttime without having any IRs kick in to go into black and white. So now, like I said, I'll take any questions anyone might have. I do ask that if you have any questions, you go to the top of your Zoom meeting, you go to the Q&A tab, not the chat tab, but the Q&A tab. Drop your questions in there, and I'll be more than happy to answer those questions. All right, well, it looks like no one else has any questions. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us on today's IC Realtime webinar. My name is Michael Caballero. I'm one of the National Sales Executives here at IC Realtime. Have a fantastic Thanksgiving and stay safe.